Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of this ash fusion video. This tree has been on a bench rather than on the ground, and as such we haven't got the massive set of roots that have grown into the floor beneath, but it has grown very well. It still has a few leaves on, but it seems to be pretty much settling down for the winter now. And this, if you recall, or if you watched the older video, which I will put the link in the description for, is just being grown. I just put in a whole bunch of ash seedlings and pulled them together in the center. Hopefully this will all fuse together at some point. It won't be I'm not aiming for a exposed root tree in this tree. I just want all these to fatten up eventually and become one solid trunk, and then I've fanned out all the growth to make it a low squat tree. And pretty much all I'm going to do to this is there's a few pieces that are kind of in the wrong direction, and there are other pieces that are just kind of interfering with one another and making it very congested. Let's give you a quick spin and can take out that piece of hose pipe that was holding the center open, and that's done its job now. The trees are quite happy, and I think I can pretty much remove these guy wires. I shall see whether we get movement. If they spring straight back up, obviously the guy wire will have to go back on. You know, I'm going to leave it. It's not going to hurt any over the winter. And ideally with these sorts of seed trays, you can just make a little hook. How well can you see that? Little hook hooks under the lip of the pot. Then your guy wire can be any length you want. So there are a few pieces. This I'm going to do something about. My guy wire seems to have slipped somewhat. But hook that back under there, and I'm hoping I can hook that. If the guy wire will stay in place. That's as down and dirty a bit of wiring you'll ever see in your life. But that's pulling that into a better plane. Okay, so I'm going to just shorten a lot of this back to a bud. I'm going to take that piece out there. Let's cut that stub back. A nice fat bud next to it, just here, which I will hopefully will spark into growth. Going to take out some of these little pieces that are not really helping. Some will stay, and they will help fatten everything up. Again, this is not destined to be a beautiful tree. It's destined to be an interesting tree, possibly an ugly tree. But if you can see beauty in a tree that's had a hard life, as I can, then perhaps you can understand why, or where my thought processes are going with that. Bit of a stub there. As I say, I'm not being exactly clinical about this because it will get some further refinement come spring when I start to see where buds are bursting and where they're not, depending on whether we have a really harsh winter this year, how well the trees fare. A couple of pieces like that I'm going to leave, shorten slightly. Those will probably get wired in the spring. There's a dead stub there. And again, that tree, this piece I think probably needs wiring come the spring. I'm going to shorten it to there for now. Not going to wait till spring. Going to grab a quick piece of wire and try and get it to hook underneath if I can. That's it. And then that piece can be persuaded to come down like so. So that's the third tree in this series. I'll just give you a quick 360 of that. As I say, it's going to be a short, squat, spread tree. I want the canopy to be low and wide. That's my vision for this tree. Okay, final tree of the 4. Again, this was sat on the side of the pond, so it's put a lot of growth out of the bottom of its pot, which has got a lot of growth at the top. Having moved it, of course, well, I didn't say that in the other videos, but having moved it, all of this would just perish over the winter, really, because it's no longer buried in the mud and soil at the side of the pond, so it'll go nicely in the compost. This I think I will have to repot. I can tell by the way the pot is slightly bulging, and also there are roots on the surface here, so this tree group of trees, however you want to think of it, as it's a fusion project, it's a number of trees that will become one, they filled this pot. So this is obviously a root over rock project, a bunch of trees. I do have this unfortunate gap all the way down here, which is unfortunate. However, given time, I think it will fill in. Same deal with these as before. This piece has died. I can see that in there. So, although it's still flexible, maybe it hasn't. And it's dead at the top there. Fingernail test is telling me no, there's no green. So although it's nice and flexible, it's just hasn't realised it's pegged it yet. So I'm going to remove that if I can get the cutters in, like so. Cooper's thinks there's something in the field. He does think it's his field, bless him. Okay, so I'm going to leave this piece because this piece might need to be tied in if this piece subsequently dies, which I think that piece is dead. So I'm going to leave this long whippy bit, and it is a long whippy bit because I think that's going to need to get tied into here come the spring. However, this bit seems fine, so I'm gonna cut it back to this bud here to be on the safe side, and then if I'm happy with it in the spring, it can be cut back to here. Take out a bunch of these lower shoots. These aren't really going to be helpful in getting this piece to fattened against the rock. These higher shoots might, so I'm gonna leave this tiny little shoot that's just here, and this one I'll just cut back but leave, and it can grow. And this piece I'm going to take out entirely. That's a long old piece. This piece I'm just going to shorten like so, which brings us back round to this piece that I want to keep to tie in. Moving up, I'm just going to change the direction of growth of that, like so. That gives us an interesting piece of movement just there. Cut that back quite hard to a bud there. Bit of dye back here. So I'll just trim that back. And then here we have some good fusion, but inverse taper, reverse taper. I always get confused over those. So I think I'm going to actually go and get my saw and cut this off at this point. Okay, so I'm gonna try and take this off just here. And we have one piece not fused, which I will take off to remove the whole thing, just so. That's a fair bit of growth for 1 year in a pot. So I'm going to just trim that back to there and trim that back to there. As I say, this piece is actually dead here, so I'm going to have to try and bring this piece into the action somehow. Maybe that'll come in around there like so. Yeah, I think that would work. What I will need to do is actually it's going to stay on its own, so if I cut that back, come spring, if I feel a need, I can wire it into place or use grafting tape. But for now, I think that will do. It will obviously get chopped back once fusion has occurred, as this piece has. I have a stub there. Let's get rid of that. This piece, as I say, that's the dead part, but I'm going to leave that in place until we've achieved a bit of fusion here. I really don't mind if I have a gap there for several years. As this piece fattens and these pieces fatten, it should fill in. That's the theory. So that's the end of part 2. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for you, and we will see you in the next one. So in the meantime, please do take care of yourselves. Stay safe.